Collaboration is so important because we can't get work done without it. And collaboration also means collaborating, like you just illustrated, Linda, in different environments, in hybrid, in remote, in person. And I currently work hybrid. I'm in the office 3 days a week, sometimes more like 4, and I'm remote. And I always make sure to be available during the hours. That is a big part of collaboration, just showing up.
Hi there, and welcome to the HR Podcast. This is Linda Misegadis
and Cyndi Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. I'm here with hold on, I have a new word for you, Cyndi, through the stupendous Cyndi Manuel, my co-host and good friend.
My goodness.
Isn't that a good one?
Every week, I'm like, what's she going to say? Because it's going to make me feel good. So thank you.
Find some new words. Yeah,
thank
I
you,
know.
Friend.
Appreciate you. Absolutely. I couldn't, keep using the same words over and over again. So, and it wouldn't sound very sincere if I did that. So. Well, I am very excited about our guest and our topic that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing building sustainable work collaborations, and we have a very special guest in the studio with us today, Wendy B. Dalwin, who I know really well. I've just had such a great opportunity to work with Wendy over the years. She is amazing. But let me tell you a little bit about her. Wendy provides leadership and strategic direction to advance the mission and goals of the Somerville Chamber of Commerce. She oversees all aspects of chamber operations, including advocacy, member services, community engagement, and responsibility for financial oversight and management. Wendy has an extensive background in event programming, operations, and business development. She is the current chapter officer of the Boston Toastmasters. Wendy is an alumnus of the University of Pennsylvania and also served on the board of the Boston chapter as vice president. So welcome to the studio, Wendy.
What do you do with all your free time, Wendy? Sorry.
I have much more nowadays, so I'm pretty happy in my new role. So I'm pretty happy.
Wow.
I'll bet you do. Back from the days when I first met Wendy, she was working for the Public Sector Network and traveling all the time. So I'll bet being able to be local is really awesome. So it's so good to have you here. Before we jump in, I just want to provide a couple statistics like I like to do around building sustainable work collaborations offer numerous benefits for both employees and organizations. And here are just some of the key advantages from a statistical perspective. So in collaborative workplaces, we see a 30% increase in productivity. Generally speaking, 73% of employees perform better when collaborating, and 99.1% of workers prefer organizations that promote honest communication. Employees who are engaged in collaborative environments show a 41% lower absenteeism. 60% of employees are more innovative in a collaborative setting. Good teamwork can lead to a 21% increase in profitability. And effective communication and collaboration can result in 4.5 times higher talent retention. So pretty amazing statistics. Yeah.
Kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wendy, we are so excited to have you here in the studio. What does sustainable work collaboration mean to you?
Sustainable work collaboration for me isn't a one and done. It's taken the time to build a partnership, to get to know someone, to take a genuine interest in someone. For me, you can read all the business school books and manuals you want, but unless you take the time to know somebody, my former boss, and he never liked when I called him boss, Alex Chard, used to
Love
always,
Alex.
isn't he great?
Yes.
He used to always tell me I was very good at feeling the energy of a situation. And maybe because I overuse that word energy all the time, you can feel when you get along with someone, when you enjoy being in the room with them. And building a sustainable collaboration, to me, it's building blocks. It's building trust over time. It's proving yourself. And also, when you fall, it's about getting back up. We all make mistakes, and there's several ways you can tackle them. I remember early on, I made a mistake, and I was very honest, and I owned up to it. I said it was my fault. I put somebody in the wrong track. That was my responsibility, and I explained it to them and fixed it. And from then on, they were one of our sponsors for 3 years from that point. Now, had I fibbed and not told the truth, he or she would have never trusted me.
Yeah.
So it's just really being you and building something over time with somebody.
I love that. And I'm a big proponent of that as well. It's like owning up to your mistakes. I remember years ago, Cyndi, back when we worked for McData, we had a big payroll error that happened with our Canadian payroll group, and we made a mistake with their T4s, and it was our fault. And so, that's exactly what you just described there. I sent an email out, said, listen, it was our fault. Here's what we did, but here's what we're going to do to fix it. And you know what? We did not get nearly as many angry employees or anything because we just admitted it. It's like, it's like, hey, we screwed up. We made the mistake, but you were so important to us. And here's all the things that we're going to do to make sure that we fix it. So I couldn't agree more with you. And I'm wondering, Wendy, why do you think that collaboration is more important today in the work environment and maybe even especially in these remote hybrid environments we're all living in today?
Good question.
Collaboration is so important because we can't get work done without it. And collaboration also means collaborating, like you just illustrated, Linda, in different environments, in hybrid, in remote, in person. And I currently work hybrid. I'm in the office 3 days a week, sometimes more like 4, and I'm remote. And I always make sure to be available during the hours. That is a big part of collaboration, just showing up. If somebody knows you're available, if they know you are there, you are on your computer, you are working your hours, and you're available, that goes a long way.
And I totally agree.
I'm so sorry. Can I ask a follow-up to that, Wendy?
Sure.
Because I do think it's different. And there's so many companies now that are saying, come back to the office for, in a hybrid role so that we are more collaborative. But I do still think, it's a big world. And, there's a lot of people who still work remotely because then you can work with multiple people in different locations and things of that nature. So do you have some tips on how to be collaborative when you are, even if you're a hybrid, when you're working remotely? Are there some things we could do?
Yes. One thing to work collaborative is share your calendar with everybody.
Yeah.
That is first and foremost. And that goes back to the availability. Share your calendar. Go into whether you have a Slack or a Teams chat, go into it regularly. Check in. When I used to work fully remote, I would let my team members know, long day, I'm going to go out for a 15-minute walk. Need me, reach me on my cell. Oh, tomorrow I'm on PTO. That is a huge thing, sharing your schedule so people know how to reach you, where you're at. And that's how you build collaboration.
I like that. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't, and I think it's because in the days when we were all in an office together, you could see people, right? So you didn't necessarily ever go look at their calendar because you knew if they weren't there or they were there because you could actually see them. So I think that's a really good point, Wendy. Too often we're not in the habit of sharing our calendar, sharing our availability so that people do know when we're available and we're not available. So I think that's a really great tip. I'm curious, like, could you share a personal experience where strong collaboration led to a successful outcome? I know you shared one story with us a little bit about where you felt like where you had made the mistake in scheduling, but tell us about, just some kind of personal experience that you've had where collaboration has really come into play.
Yes. And I know her quite well. My co-chair for Toastmasters, Audrey Creasham, we met because the president of Boston Toastmasters thought with my event program background, I should co-chair the education team for the conference. I'm
Okay.
like, okay, well, this is going to be a huge endeavor. And I decided, okay, I'll do it. And I was introduced to Audrey and we hit it off. She was in Toastmasters for over 20 years and I was only in there for 2. But I had the organization from a speaker onboarding, from putting speakers together, from programming, and she knew exactly what the program should be. So we actually put together the programming together and it was very, very successful. So that's where collaboration came in handy. I
Yeah.
was in Massachusetts. She was on the other part in Cape Cod. We
Okay.
scheduled weekly meetings via Zoom based on both our schedules. And we were both super early risers. And while we both didn't celebrate Easter, so one Easter Sunday, we got up at 6 and just spent all day collaborating. And it
Oh,
was great.
wow.
I got to know
Yeah.
her. We went through different templates. I was saying, I think this run of show. Now, as you well know, Linda, Alex, who we used to work with, would create
Yeah.
the most beautiful spreadsheets in the run of show. And he taught me how to, you put every speaker's information, you have it lined. And I took that to CLCon, which they never had before. That's what they call their conference, CLCon. So, and this year, Audrey and I are doing it again. And this will most likely be my last year doing it. And that was a thing that I just met a person. Someone put us together. And because we were a 2-hour drive, we were forced to work remotely. And we did it all remotely.
I love
It
that.
just sounds like, I think sometimes this is the case. Like, I'm looking from the outside looking in, and I see, Wendy, you've got some really great talents, right? And I see Linda has some really great talents, and maybe you complement each other.
Okay.
And that's like, based on what you just shared, that's such a good collaboration because you're each bringing something to the party. And, so you're kind of valuing what the other person is bringing as well.
Yes. And to talk candidly, Linda is an excellent leader. She is very fair. She gives everybody the same chance. Everybody's equal with Linda. And she gives you a chance to prove yourself and she will work with you. And Linda will tell you, hey, look, when I run a panel, I like to be free flowing, but I like it prepped. So I know who's there, what I'm doing, and I can do my background information. And that's the key, to take the time to know the other person and to
You know what to
understand where they're coming
expect.
from.
Yeah.
And I happen to be lucky with Linda because she's ultra organized, ultra on time, and all those traits that I sometimes get a little hammered that I'm too much like that. So with Linda, my traits were welcome. So I think that was a great
Your
Absolutely.
language.
Absolutely.
I
That always
appreciate that
helps
about
for
her
sure.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it does. It makes such a big difference. And I'm curious, Wendy, from your perspective, like what are some of the biggest misconceptions around collaboration in the workplace?
Is one of the biggest conceptions is you have to work with people that are like you. You have to
I
be
like that.
like-minded. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think that's the case. I have had people who are the total opposite of me that I have organized, gave them things, and they've relied on me to do that. And they appreciated that skill set. So I think that's a misconception that you have to be alike. Sometimes your rocks can fill somebody else's hole. That's what my father says about him and my
I
mother.
like
That's
I
that.
what's
like
been
that.
married so
Yeah.
long. So
That's sweet.
opposites can work together. The yin and yang can be
Absolutely.
good. And
No,
that's a
it's a really good
misconception.
point. I like that. I think that's really good. Cyndi, I know you're certified in the Working Genius, and that's kind of part of that whole concept, right? Of Patrick
Yeah,
Lencioni's
yeah.
six working genius, right? And that it is about aligning because if we're all exactly the same and we all think exactly the same, we're not really going to get what we're hoping to get out of a project or things that we're doing because if we're all like-minded, then where's the diversity in thought? Where's the different
Right.
ideas flowing from? And so, I think that's a really good point, Wendy, as and we do though find ourselves, I think, sometimes gravitating towards people who think the same as
So
we
true.
do, behave the same way because that's our comfortability in that, right?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that Patrick Lencioni and the Six Working Geniuses talks about is you have typically two things that you're really good at. You have two things that you're competent at, and then you have two things that you are not good at. And so why not have a Wendy who offset,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not as detail oriented. Wendy, it sounds like you are really great at spreadsheets and putting all the detail. Why wouldn't you want that kind of person with you? Again, just that much better at the collaboration then, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So, Wendy, what would you say, like, what are the core foundations of strong and sustainable collaborations?
I think it's trust. That is a core foundation. Trust,
It-
accountability, and showing up.
I like
I
that.
believe a
Yeah,
big part of things are just showing up and being there. And if you can't show up and be prompt and be there, nothing gets started.
I like that. Our CEO, Jen Morgan, says, if you say you're going to do something, then do it because that's the worst thing. And that's one of the first things that I think really breaks down trust, right? Is if we say we're going to do something, but then we don't do what we say we're going to, it really does break down that trust. And without trust, there is no collaboration. You're right. And you're right. Just sometimes it's just showing up, just being there and being present and mindful and kind of in the moment. I know for me, sometimes that's something I struggle with these days because we have so many distractions, like
Right now.
trying to make sure that I'm like present and focused is really challenging sometimes.
I actually learned my lesson the hard way on that, Linda. I was at a conference years ago and I went on my phone and the big boss pulled me aside and said, Wendy, I'm enacting a rule. When you're here, you're present and put the phone down. Do not text, do not email, do not anything. This is the time that you're supposed to be here and be present. He said, do
Uh,
I need to take away your phone? I said, yeah, you
Wow.
might have to. And he did for 2 hours. And then I learned to be present.
Yeah, isn't that funny that even as adults, sometimes we're like, "Yes, please take my phone and put it somewhere else," because it's really hard because we
There's
think
so much.
that we have to stay so connected, right? I know that's a challenge I have a lot of times, even when I'm trying to be present in a meeting. If we were at an offsite event a week ago, and I had to keep reminding myself, like, close your laptop and be here because
Yeah.
oftentimes, and you're not even hearing what's going on because you're so distracted by everything else, so
Yeah. It's dedicated time. I love those three too, Wendy. And I think they're simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy, but it's all a part of building
yeah,
a relationship too, right? That whole collaboration. Yeah.
absolutely. No, I think it's so critical. So, Wendy, what advice would you give to organizations to kind of build that culture that encourages effective collaboration?
I think, and I said this before, I find as women, we sometimes don't have the old boys network and support each other.
Mm,
And I think
yeah,
we have to learn not to compete, but to support, to be complementary of each other. And I think that's one thing
Yes.
that organizations could encourage is that we're all on the same team. Yes, we want promotions and we want raises and we want bonuses. And I'm just as competitive as the next person,
right.
but how can we help each other out? What
Yeah,
maybe I'm looking for something different than you.
yeah, that's a really good point.
Absolutely.
Maybe I collaborate with someone in accounting who's
Mm,
really good at certain things I'm not good at, and we help each other out that way. I've
Yeah.
sometimes collaborated with people in totally different departments. One of my favorite collaborations was always with sales in my previous role
Hmm.
because we weren't in direct competition and we could help each other.
Yeah.
And I
I
would
like
always
that.
put like 6 speakers in the chat and say, remember Mike LaFranc, Mike, what do you think of these 6?
Yeah.
Would that help
Yeah.
you? And he goes, yeah, maybe those 4, but not those 2. And so I built a collaboration with someone who was directly competing with, but we could help each other.
I like that.
Awesome.
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up too, because I think that there's a balance. And Cyndi, I'd love to get your take on this as well. Is just thinking about a lot of times organizations do create an environment of competition, and there is something healthy about competition, right? I mean, it's good to want to be the best and to strive, but sometimes organizations can create an environment of unhealthy competition, and so it always comes about like, well, how do I show that I'm the best? And I'm kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts on that, Cyndi? And like finding that balance between, you know, you got a little competition, but maybe not too much competition.
Yeah, I would just say like some of the healthiest organizations that I work with, their leadership, um, you know, has to be collaborative. Going back to our topic, because if they're not, they're going to walk out of a room, especially during times of change. They're going to walk out of a room, and some are going to be saying one thing, and some are going to be saying another thing. So, um, even though I do think there is a healthy amount of competition just when you're a leader in general, because you want to do a good job, you want to be the
Yeah.
best, you want your team to succeed. But I think if you have the mindset of the whole is greater than, the sum of the whole is better than their parts, or whatever that
And
saying
I
is.
never get that saying right
Whatever.
either, but I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I just feel like, when you are collaborative like that, and the sum is just so much better than any one of us can do
Yeah.
on our own.
Yep.
So yeah, I do. Those are like the healthy um organizations that I get to work with, and it drives culture. So it
Absolutely.
does make an impact on, whether people want to go and stay and work there, as Wendy was saying before, and you were saying, Linda, in your stats, the retention.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think it really is important. And Wendy, you said something that I thought was really impactful as well, because Cyndi and I talk about this frequently. Women don't have the same networks historically that men have had, and I am a big believer that women need to be there and lift each other up and support one another. It's just so critical. It's part of the reason why we have the Her Resources podcast is really to
Mhm.
support women. But talk a little bit about, your thoughts related to maybe how women can drive more of that collaboration, and maybe even some ideas that you might have around creating community.
I think women can drive that collaboration by being confident. Like towards the last 4 or 5 months of my last role, I kind of got a lot of affirmations from sponsors and speakers. And at that point, I knew how good I was. I knew that, okay, you know what? If they don't want me, or if a coworker doesn't want me, or my environment doesn't want me, I have the capacity to go out and get something else.
I like
So
that.
I think as women, we need to build the confidence in each other and saying, it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
I don't need to compete because I can compete.
Yep.
I compete every
Yeah.
day, and I didn't get here by not competing. So I think healthy competition is fine, but I also think just being transparent, keeping your receipts. I had a colleague once who kept saying she did work when I did it. Okay.
Mhm.
I had email chains, LinkedIn. And she goes, no, you didn't get that. I got that. I'm like, you weren't even here when that happened. You physically couldn't have gotten it. And
Yeah.
it came to the point where I started ignoring that person. And I just felt that collaboration would never happen, as opposed to so many other people who wanted to collaborate. So I think for those who don't want to join the collaboration train, I always work around them. That's advice I give, because there's always going to be one or two no matter where you go. And no matter how hard a company tries, there's always people who are not collaborative, who don't want to work together. And it can be male or female. And to build networks, I suggest maybe, women, find your own board of directors. Like, I have different people I go to for different things. I go to my best friend, Wendy, since the 4th grade. Funny name, huh? Wendy gave up her legal career, teaches special ed. She's like the coolest person, the most relaxed, doesn't compete with anyone. If she gets home on time and doesn't hit 3 hours of traffic, she's in a good mood. I often rely on my sister because my sister has a demanding corporate job, and to relax and have collaboration, she founded a women's comedy group dealing with
how
women and
fun.
minority
What a great
individuals who
idea.
got left behind.
Yeah.
And she's got the entrepreneur route, so I go to her. I will call my mother at the crack of dawn because we both get up early. She's on my board of directors.
Nice.
So I found that I make
love
my
that.
own.
Yeah.
And so I suggest we board of directors, whether it's at work, whether it's through friends, whether it's through different support systems.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you know how they say, and Linda, I'm sure you've heard this too, and Wendy, you as well, like be careful of the 5 people you surround yourself with most, right?
Mhm.
Like they should really be the people who are supportive, who, to your point, I love how you call them your board of directors,
I
Wendy.
do too. Yeah.
That's such a cool way to think about it. And
That
and I
is.
also love that your sister and your mom are 2 members of your
Are
board.
part of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I've heard that that advice given before, Wendy, as well, as that create your own board of directors, that it is important as women that we do have that support network. And you've got that person who is always honest with you, right? Even when you don't want to hear what they have to say, they're always going to lay it on the line for you. And you need people like that in your world, that are willing to say that. But then you also need that person who's just going to be there with a kind approach, and maybe they're a little easier on you in those situations. And so it is nice to have that good blend. I think as women we do need that, and I love that the way that you described that as well. I agree with you, Cyndi. That board of directors is a great way to do that. So. No, that's awesome. What do you think is like one key piece of advice for professionals who are looking to improve their collaborative skills? Like, I know you're part of Toastmasters, and I personally have not been involved in Toastmasters, but I do hear that they offer a really awesome opportunity for building that kind of collaboration along with other things.
They do. And one thing that they really do well is we put sweat equity. Our membership for all year is less than $200. We take on roles in Toastmasters. In other words, like one week, I will be the table topics master. I will pick a topic and individuals can speak for 2 minutes on the topics. Another week, I'll be the timer. Another week, I'll be the grammarian. So we take on different roles to have a meeting. We have hybrid meetings. Different clubs are in person, different clubs are online. And for me, Toastmasters has really been transformative for me. About 3 years ago, when I started my previous role, I couldn't go up and say 2 sentences. It's funny, I book speakers for a living, but I can't speak myself.
I remember actually meeting you, Wendy, just how shy you were because, you definitely, I could tell, like you were not as comfortable and as confident in those environments.
You'd never know.
Mm-mm.
Yes. And, Alex Chard, who's formerly supervised me, said, Wendy, I want to support you. What do you think? And when I found Toastmasters, he goes, I'm all in. He came when I gave my icebreaker speech. He came online.
Aw,
And
that's so cool.
him and Jesse Welty, the president of Toastmasters, really supported me. In other words, like Jesse had me grow, and I'm the vice president of education there. And so I took on that role because I wanted to help others who were shy.
Right.
And bring them out of their shadows and be like, it's okay. Like, I've been through it. I know every single step and how painful it is to go up and speak when you're not comfortable and how you have to just break it down. And that was one piece of advice I say. is to find an area or somebody that will help you overcome
I love
what
that.
your obstacle is. And for me, it was speaking. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, one-on-one, but you put me in front of a room. My God, it's
Mhm.
depressing at that time.
Yeah, it's hard. Well,
Howard.
and there are a lot of, there are probably a lot of people who either don't know what Toastmasters is or, thought that it didn't even exist anymore. Actually, I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, oh, I didn't even know Toastmasters was still around. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's still around. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about like what is Toastmasters and why is that such a huge benefit?
It's such a huge benefit because Toastmasters is a platform to work on your public speaking. You can pick 6 different mastery paths. I picked presentation. Some people pick humor. Some people pick leadership. And along there, you have mini assignments that help build you. Like you need 4 to 6 assignments to reach level 1. Then you go to another 6 to reach level 2. So you have and this is what I liked about Toastmasters, you have a designated path and goals to work toward.
I like that.
And are you involved in that then, Wendy, since you're the vice president of the training?
Yes.
That's so
I'm
cool.
involved in just helping others. And I've had like some one-on-one sessions where I've mentored people and said, it's okay. It's okay if, you can't do something or, go at your own path. Don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
I love that. No, I think that's really great. And it is kind of finding. I remember one of the things that I used to really struggle with was if you wanted to talk work, I could talk to you all day long, every day type of thing, but to just be in a casual conversation. And so it made networking really challenging for me at events or different things because not everybody wants to talk about work. They want to, you want to take the opportunity to get to know people. And so a colleague of mine recommended there's a book called The Art of Small Talk. And so it was really helpful for me because it helped me learn how to go into a room and not be a wallflower, because that's what I would do. I would just kind of hang out by the wall or at a table, but started to help me ask just simple questions so you don't have to probe into everybody's background, but it gives you an opportunity to just kind of ask those light conversations, gives you a chance to start to build relationships and kind of eases the tension that can be felt because to your point, not everybody is comfortable in those environments.
Yeah. Is there a path for that, Wendy? At
um,
Toastmaster, I agree with you, Linda. That's not
that's
easy.
actually, no, but that's actually something good, the art of small talk,
Yeah.
that is really, really something because I understand what you're saying because it's easy at a work event because you have that common ground.
Right.
But, well, it was funny because my best friend said, oh, I figured I'd go to this mixer. I haven't been to a bar in 2 years. She's like, oh my God, it was horrible. She goes, I don't really drink. People were talking about me. Like, how was the hockey game? And she's like, I don't know. I went to the gym, ran and did my student teaching.
Yeah.
And I think that's also true in a social setting.
Yeah, it is. It's so true. And it is very intimidating. And so, there's some great tidbits in there. So for anybody out there, there is a book called The Art of Small Talk. And it is really helpful because it just little things like that, to your point, like even knowing some of those small things, if you're in an area where, whatever, maybe they're big college football or something like that. Like just
Yeah.
little pieces of that. You don't have to go deep into it and pretend like you're an expert in college football, but you certainly could, maybe say, so how about those, CU Buffs or whatever, things like that. And it just gets people comfortable and talking, and it kind of helps even bring down your walls a bit too. Because I know for me, that was it. I would go in and be very guarded, which then also, does not foster that collaborative environment either. Because you're kind of like, well, I'm just going to stand over here. Then people assume that you're standoffish or maybe you're not friendly. And it's just because maybe you're a little shy, maybe you're a little introverted, but that's, what's going on. So,
are you looking for innovative and creative content options? Needing audio or video production or consulting? Or do you just have a great idea that you want to bring to life? LJM Productions specializes in making the big picture attainable, from commercials and social media content to just audio-visual cleanup and editing. We are here to make your next big project a reality. For more information or to receive a quote, email ljmproductionsco@gmail.com.
Well, I'm curious, what do you think is one mistake to avoid when building sustainable work relationships?
I think one mistake to make is to toot your own horn while you're trying to
Mm,
build it, to talk about
yeah,
too much about your accomplishments
good
and what
point.
you do. Show, don't tell. That's what I always say. Gives them a
Like
chance
that.
to see what you do. Don't tell them.
That's
I love
cool.
that. Cyndi always uses, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them appropriately.
Yeah. Listen twice as much as you talk. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so true and I think that sometimes too is that comfortability, right? We're more comfortable sometimes in those situations, and so we do overtalk, or maybe we share too much about ourselves, and we forget to ask the other person some questions and get to know them, and that kind of develops that collaborative relationship as well.
And it was funny
Yeah,
because I'm currently in a new role. Next Tuesday will be 3 months. And
congratulations.
thank
Congratulations.
you. And there are a lot of transferable skills. And I've helped build boards. I helped build the USA board for Public Sector Network. And my previous job at Bridgewell, I helped build the board there as well. So
Yeah,
I'm familiar working with boards. I've been on boards. I'm familiar. I consider myself decent enough at business development and client relations. But everything's been a little bit new to me. And I said, it's okay to sit back and observe and let people get to know me and let them see what I
wow.
can do.
Good point.
Yep, I like
And
that. That's really
trust
good
will be
advice.
built over time if people see what I can do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a really
Great
good point.
point.
Well, and Wendy, you transitioned over to the Chamber of Commerce. I don't think that many people know what chambers of commerce do either. Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
what does a chamber do, and why would people be interested in that?
I'm in the city of Somerville, Massachusetts. I'm the executive director over the chamber there. And chambers do so much. They have, like ours has government affairs. Let's see, I'm a business and I want a zone, and it's taken me 2 or 3 years. I go to the chamber for support. Who can I talk to? Where do I go? That's one avenue. If you're a small business and you want to introduce yourself to members, like there is a great new fitness place in Somerville, Mass. And all my friends are excited because they have like steam rooms and cold plunges. And they're not as expensive as a Equinox, but they're not a Planet Fitness. That's in between. And I've
Yeah.
been looking for something in between for a gym. I don't want to pay $400, but necessary $10, I'm willing to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
Republic Fitness. And we are going to offer our members a free week there and let them try it.
Cool.
Because the chair of our board, Adam Portney, I guess it came for him being a former athlete. He's like, people really need a full week to try out a gym, to see their pattern.
So
Going
true.
once
Yeah.
won't do. And that's something we're offering to them. Another, Raymond and Flanner, they're very big in Connecticut.
Uh-huh.
That's a furniture store, and they opened an assembly in Somerville, Mass. We are going to host an event for our government affairs committee in their showroom to have a breakfast, and we'll have a government affairs meeting there. So
idea.
that will be places that will come into the store. We're also, this is my big endeavor for the next few months on top of others, we're doing what we call a taste of Somerville. Local restaurants are going to have, I don't love using the word booth, but let's say they're going to have a booth where people can come and sample their food. And we'll be teaming up with a local charity to give a portion of the proceeds to. And I just think that's a great opportunity because how many times do we look at a restaurant and we're like, oh, I don't know if I want to pay that money.
Right.
But
Get a
for one
taste.
ticket price, we can go around, sample, have some good music, have a
Yeah.
drink or two.
Love
Think we
it.
need to head out to Somerville,
I
Linda.
think so. I know another road trip. Cindy
Yes,
and I
June
are
11th, 5 to 8. You can bring Logan. We'll have a party. But
All
there you
right.
go. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that is. I love that. No, that's wonderful. Wendy, who would you say as you're thinking who has been your greatest role model as you think about kind of as you've built your collaboration? Like who's that person who helped you?
in a sort of odd way, I would say it was my grandfather, Ben Prester.
Okay.
He, growing up in our family, everybody wanted to please Ben. He was so charming and dynamic, okay? He came from poverty, okay? He had to share a bedroom with his brother, and he rose to financial success and was able to go to the golf club. And I remember as a kid, my family didn't have any money. My father was kind of outs on the family. He was supporting himself through dental school, doing construction. My mother was home with kids. We were in a small apartment. And my grandfather once invited me to his golf club, and I couldn't afford any good clothes. So he took me to the clubhouse. So I went and embarrassed him, and I was so nervous. And I knew that, like, he judged us, and I couldn't sleep all night. And we all had to get up at 6 a.m., me and him, to meet his business/golf buddies at IHOP. That was a big thing. In Delray Beach, Florida, they all went to IHOP in the morning. And I could always get up early, so he was impressed. And I guess I spoke very candidly to his friends and was just myself. And they said, well, how do you like being at this golf club? I said, look, my parents can't afford a lot, and this was an honor to be here. And I was so grateful. You know, my grandfather let me take a tennis lesson and took me to a cocktail party. And I didn't have the chance for that otherwise. And one of the men said, I appreciate that because my grandchild would rather be at the tattoo parlor than be here with me. Like you are. And and you showed a sense of gratitude for what you were given that day. And you were humble. You didn't try to be somebody you were not.
Yeah. I love that.
And that was a big lesson I learned from Ben Pressner. As you go in as yourself, you build a network around who you are, and you don't need to impress people. If they don't want you, that's not the right crowd for you.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
No. Yep. That is great advice. I totally agree.
Not everybody is for
wonderful.
everybody. And I'm totally with you, Wendy. I'm like, the people that, are connecting or collaborating with you are the ones who want to collaborate with you because you're who you are. You're being authentic and being yourself.
Absolutely. No, I love that.
I do too.
Wendy, any last words of advice you'd give to all of our listeners out there?
I would just give the advice is it takes several times to find what works for you and what doesn't. I can't tell you how many nights I came home crying myself to sleep. I never cry in front of people. That, oh my God, this position isn't for me. This group doesn't like me. And I learned through the years to get a little bit of a thicker skin, to say it's okay. Go where you're valued. Go where it's a good fit for you. That's how sustainable collaborations happen. Or we are able to sustain our collaborations by going where we're valued, by going where it's the right.
I love that. That is really great advice. Well, and I know I have been very grateful to that you came into my life, and I know we have developed not just a sustainable collaboration, but a friendship. And I'm so happy to that you were willing to come on and join Cyndi and I on the podcast. And I think you shared some really excellent piece of advice for all of our listeners out there.
Thank you, Wendy.
It was truly an honor on my half, especially for someone that I admire so much. And now that I got to meet you, Cyndi. It's another person I admire. So thank you.
Thank you. Back at you, Wendy. I really like you. You're on.
Back at you too.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Well, thank you again for another amazing episode. Cyndi, always good to see you. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next time on another episode of the Her Resources podcast.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misegadis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Banas, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow, subscribe to our LinkedIn, and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.